my mind. That what they were talking about, the worship that was taking place in the early church, the centrality of the Christian worship was the Eucharist. It wasn't a sermon. It was the Eucharist, and they're saying that it's the body, blood of Christ. And not just one. I mean, and that's why I'm sitting there going, okay, these are the guys behind the guys. You know, I mean, these are the disciples of some of the apostles, and I mean, the guys that are closest to it. And so, I mean, if they were wrong from day one, well, that didn't necessarily mean that I was wrong today and thinking that was merely, symbolic. But at the same point in time, man, I mean, that was a pretty bold statement, and I think just those realizations that okay, like this is pretty ancient, like as in it goes back to day one. Yeah. And so once the doctrine of the Eucharist came up, I just started doing this search on the history of the Christian denominations. Because just backtrack a little bit, I mean, like I just had somewhat of a crisis of faith at this point in time when I'm in no man's land and going, okay, I know what I believe, but I don't know why. I stepped away from the teaching capacity that I was doing at the community and that I was a part of, and realizing that, man, I'm going to be held accountable. James talks about being accountable for what we teach and put forth. And I remember going, I mean, like I'm doing this well-intentioned, but why do I believe this? I know I believe it, but why? And walking through those questions, I mean, like I started like, why do I even believe in God? I mean, and so I started going back to the beginning. I mean, the arguments for and against, and then, why one God instead of many gods, and then, why Christian instead of being a Jew or a Muslim. And then eventually it was, okay, yes, I believe with everything in me. I mean, just from a reason standpoint, and then, coupling it with the scriptures that, yes, Jesus did raise from the dead, and that a church was established, and then I'm looking at the options in front of me, and it just, I started kind of picking through like the major ones and looking and going, okay, like this person founded this particular faith tradition based upon this, and that whole realization that ultimately I condemned the Catholic Church or maybe Eastern Orthodoxy for their traditions, you know what I'm saying, and their traditions, and that realization again that I was a part of a faith tradition too. I had traditions too. So what I was condemning, like I was in a sense doing the same thing. I was just basically, like I guess in practice, saying that my faith traditions are more pure than your faith traditions, or my faith traditions are right, which kind of gets back to what I was saying in the original part of the story, looking at grandparents and friends and other people. The reason why we were Baptists is because we were more in line with, what was going on, because if not, well then we'd get it worked out and we'd be doing it, And so that was that realization, whose shoulders am I standing on? And I realized that ultimately the shoulders I was standing on were shoulders of men that, I mean, for various reasons without going into the Reformation and all that, had ultimately broken away. And so I realized that the shoulders that I was standing on needed to be Jesus Christ. And so I started walking back and going, okay, whose shoulders is he standing on? Oh, and then I think one of the biggest things that I had to come to is to go, man, the difference between doctrine and practice. And realizing, like, as I went back and going, okay, like if there's one doctrine or one teaching, because the claims of the Catholic Church were too great, it's almost like the resurrection. You claim either Christ did or he didn't. If he didn't, well then Christianity, is pointless. The Catholic Church claiming to be the church established by Christ, protected by the Holy Spirit, and that the doctrines and the teachings that was passed along as 2,000 years old, that Jesus is really present in the Eucharist, and if one of those is not true, well then it in a sense blows up the whole thing. And so then I was like, okay, if I can find one, I was looking for a reason to not be Catholic, and I had a sister-in-law that was like, what are you protesting against? And I was like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. And so, man, thanks be to God, through a lot of prayer, ended up standing there and going, okay, I'm ready to receive the Eucharist, Lord. And it was the hardest thing to do because I knew I was going to have to leave seminary, and my family and friends I told them I was going to be anything other than Catholic would have been like, oh, that's awesome, you in your relationship with God, and trying to explain that the reason why I'm becoming Catholic is because of my relationship with God, because I need and want, and he's calling me to that intimacy to him in the Eucharist,